next session, which is a book launch on Widows and Daughters, a book by Anna Suvorova. Our moderator for today is Mr. Ilhan Niaz. He's an author of several books, including Old World Empires, and he also contributes to leading international academic journals and occasionally to leading national newspapers. He's also the recipient of the Kodikara Award from Colombo in 2013. On stage, we also have the author of the book, Ms. Anna Suvorova. She's the head of the Department of Asian Literatures, Institute of Oriental Studies, Russian Academy of Sciences, Moscow. And I was conferred the Sitara Imtiaz by the President of Pakistan for her outstanding contribution to research of Pakistani cultural heritage. We also have Ms. Kishwar Naheed with us. She's one of the best known feminist poets of Pakistan. Then we have with us Ms. Nida Kirmani, who's an associate professor of sociology in the Mushtaq Ahmad Kirmani School of Humanities at LUMS. With us today, we also have Ms. Tahmina Aziz, who's the co-author of The Begum, a portrait of Rana Liaquat Ali. She's a reader of history and literature in both English and Urdu. Over to you, Ilhan.
Right, thank you so much for introducing us, and a warm welcome to everyone to this session. This is a fantastic book, Widows and Daughters. I strongly recommend that you all get a copy and read it. It's about power, it's about patriarchy, it's about women's rights, it's about politics, history, all of it wrapped together in one. We'd like to basically give you maximum time to interact with the author and the panelists, so we'll get started. What I'll basically do is that I'll ask each of our panelists to briefly talk about what they feel is important about the book. Then we'll have the author also make a few comments, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So let's get started, and I would like to ask Nida to please get the ball rolling.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for including me on the panel. I was a little confused when I got the invitation because I'm just going to give a disclaimer, this is not my area of expertise. But it was a real pleasure to read the book, and it did open up a lot of questions for me as somebody who's interested in studying gender in South Asia and in general. So in that sense, I think as an academic, this book is a wonderful resource for us. It's it's something I hadn't really thought about, the question of why we see so many of these examples of women leaders in South Asia, in every South Asian country. Is this a coincidence, or is this something that is a pattern within South Asian patriarchy? So I think the first question that the book raised for me was, how do we understand patriarchy? And I think the book really helps us complicate our understanding, because there's this idea that patriarchy is going to necessarily be stronger in our part of the world. But then we have these women in each of these countries who have stood out and who have been, leaders. So what does that actually say about patriarchy? Is it as strong as we often believe it is? Or is there space within South Asian patriarchy for these kind of women to emerge as leaders? So I think the book really helps us complicate linear notions of patriarchy, because we assume that patriarchy is getting less and less strong over time. But a lot of these women in history, in the 70s, starting from the 70s with Indira Gandhi, and even before that with, Fatima Jinnah, and we have many examples. And in the book as well, the author goes into South Asian history and shows that even before the 20th century, there are many examples of women within South Asia who've taken up leadership roles. So this actually turns a lot of stereotypes on their head when it comes to South Asian women, when it comes to Muslim women as well, because there's an assumption that Muslim women are more oppressed than other women. And especially in Western feminist literature, this has been a trend to look at the oppressed Muslim woman. But then when you look at history, we actually have many cases where women are taking leadership positions, Muslim and from other religious backgrounds as well. So it actually makes us question some of our assumptions that we have in feminist literature and academic literature on South Asia. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing, there's many things that are interesting about this book, and I won't take up too much time, but the notion that these women actually use patriarchal notions like the idea of motherhood as a means of asserting their leadership and their power. And so women are using this idea of mother of the nation as a way of actually showing their leadership. And so it's very interesting that women are playing with patriarchy in a way, which I think we all do, what Denise Candioti calls bargaining with patriarchy, how women bargain with patriarchy as a means of finding space for themselves to assert their agency or assert their leadership. Another thing that I think is really interesting for us to think about, and I hope in the discussion we can talk about this more, is what impact do women leaders have on women's rights in general? And what we see in each of the examples is that it's not straightforward. We can't assume that just because a woman is in a leadership position, she's going to necessarily bring other women along with her. So with the case of Benazir Bhutto, we see that there was an opening up of space for women. In general, there were more pro-women laws that were passed, and I think Kishwar Naheed will talk about this probably more, since she knows that history more intimately than I do. But then in Indira Gandhi's case, you see the opposite happening. She was a very authoritarian ruler. She, in many ways, was anti-equality, we can say. So we can't assume that just because a woman is in a leadership position that she's going to be a feminist leader or a women's rights activist. In some cases they have been, in other cases they actually have gone out of their way to prove that they're more men than men are. So Indira Gandhi, I think in the book as well, it talks about how people joke that she was the only man in the cabinet. Like, she was more man than most of the men that were surrounding her, and maybe she had to go out of her way to prove that she could be a leader. And outside of South Asia, we see other examples of, Margaret Thatcher and women leaders who go out of their way to prove that they can be more masculine in some ways than male leaders who preceded them. So there's no guarantee that women in power will actually benefit women as a whole. So I think one thing in the book, and maybe the last thing that I'll say, is that all of these cases are women who are, and this is the argument of the book as well, the women who are coming from particular families, they're coming from political dynasties. They're not women who emerge from the grassroots on their own. They're women who had already power that was behind them, and they used this power to their advantage. But they were not necessarily women who were revolutionary. So they weren't working for women from, for example, the lower classes. So this class aspect, I think, is also very important. I think we should discuss it more in the discussion as well, that these are elite women. So these are not women who are necessarily going to be working in the interests of women from lower economic classes. And we don't really see that much progress for those classes even still. I mean, Pakistan and India, the two countries that I know about the most, rank very, very low when it comes to gender indicators. We're almost at the bottom. India is often, said that it's the most dangerous place for women. Pakistan, out of, I think, 180 countries, we were 178. So the fact that we had women prime ministers didn't necessarily benefit the vast majority of women in this country, which isn't to say that their role wasn't important. So I'm just going to leave it at that, because I want to give the other, especially the author, time to respond as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nida. I think you've made a very important point, in the sense that we need to draw a line of distinction between feminist political workers and leaders and leaders who happen to be women and are in power, but are not necessarily committed to pursuing an agenda that would benefit or improve the lot of women in general. I would now request Kishwar Naheed Saiba to give us her remarks on the book. Kishwar Saiba, please.
यहाँ पे मौजूद है, बिकने के लिए, फ़रोख्त के लिए किताब मौजूद है, साइन करने के लिए, ताकि वो भी जहन में रखें.
जी बिल्कुल है, बिल्कुल
अच्छा.
है. Yes.
असल में ये मेरी और अन्ना की दोस्ती 40 साल पुरानी है. जब हम कभी जवान होते थे उस ज़माने की बातें हैं, और ये भी आती रही और ये मैं भी जाती रही वहाँ, और एक दूसरे से हम मिलते रहे. ये किताब जो इसने पाकिस्तान के ऊपर और पाकिस्तान की सकाफ़त, पाकिस्तान की तहज़ीब, पाकिस्तान के पीरों पर, मुर्शिदों पर, सब पे इतना कुछ लिखा है कि हमारी किसी और औरत ने या मर्द ने इतना नहीं लिखा. तो उसके लिए एक क्लैप. किताब का असल उन्वान बनता है कि वो बेटियां और बेवाएं जो इस किताब में हैं वो इक़्तिदार तक कैसे पहुंची. किताब शुरू होती है बेगम लियाकत अली ख़ां के हवाले से. मैं 7वीं क्लास में थी, बचपन में. हाँ थी, हर एक ही होता है 7वीं क्लास में. बेगम लियाकत अली ख़ां, और लियाकत अली ख़ां ने अमेरिका जाने को कबूल किया और उसको कबूल नहीं किया रूस को जाना. अब मैं पढ़ रही हूँ, पाकिस्तान पिक्टोरियल पर्चा निकलता था, उसमें बेगम दौलताना बना रही हैं लिबास, गरारे बेगम लियाकत अली ख़ां के, और उन गरारों की तफसीलात पाकिस्तान पिक्टोरियल में आ रही है. ये सब कुछ होता रहा, लेकिन बेगम लियाकत अली ख़ां ने न सिर्फ गर्ल गाइड वो बनाई, अपने लिए नेशनल गार्ड बनाए, बल्कि उन्होंने अफवाह को भी बनाया. उनके लिए मैं बिल्कुल मुख्तसर इसलिए कहूँगी, उसके लिए ये मौजूद है. पूनम वो उन पर बोल लेगी. इसके बाद जो शख्सियत पाकिस्तान की आती, ताकि किताब की पूरी चीज़ें आपको समझा दूँ. फ़ातिमा जिन्ना हैं. फ़ातिमा जिन्ना ने जब सन 64 में 65 में जनवरी फरवरी 65 में इलेक्शन लड़ा, तो फ़ातिमा जिन्ना के अगेंस्ट फील्ड मार्शल अयूब खां थे. मोची दरवाज़ा लाहौर का जिस किसी ने देखा है वो याद करे. उस ज़माने सिर्फ मोची दरवाज़ा होता था जहाँ जलसे होते थे, जहाँ आगा शोरिश काश्मीरी, अबू सईद अनवर, सारे पुराने लीडर, सब बड़े लीडर जो थे वो फ़ातिमा जिन्ना के साथ खड़े थे. इवन मौदूदी साहब तक ने उनको कहा था कि हाँ ये इलेक्शन लड़ सकती हैं, और वो इलेक्शन लड़ा. लेकिन इक़्तिदार तो उसके पास होता है जिसके पास इक़्तिदार हो. फ़ातिमा जिन्ना को बाकायदा ऐसे ही हरवाया गया जैसे इन इलेक्शनों में बहुतों को हरवाया गया था, और बाकायदा ईस्ट पाकिस्तान में भी और बलूचिस्तान में तो बाकायदा कई जगह बमबारी भी की गई वोटरों पे, ताकि वो वोट ना डाल सकें. फ़ातिमा जिन्ना की 2 खूबियाँ बहुत कमाल की थी. एक ये कि वो 11 सितंबर जब कायदे आज़म का यौम वफ़ात है, जब तक वो ज़िंदा रहीं, उस पर वो पाकिस्तान की पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन पे तकरीर किया करती थी. अब ज़माना चल रहा है अयूब खां का, और वो तकरीर में बहुत बुनियादी नुकात उठा रही हैं, तो उनकी तकरीर काटी जाती थी, तो वो कहती थी मैं नहीं करूँगी. वो तकरीर, फिर उसके बाद तकरीर हो जाती थी, क्योंकि उस ज़माने में सब चीज़ें लाइव होती थी, रिकॉर्डेड नहीं होती थी. तो वो तकरीर होती थी, बड़ी मुश्किल से इजाज़त मिलती थी कि उनकी तकरीर हो जाए. उसके बाद उन्होंने एक काम और किया था कि वो सारी बातें जो डॉक्टर इलाही बख्श ने लिखी हुई, सब कुछ हुई, वो उसमें बयान कर दी थी, उन्होंने लिख दिया. अब रह रही थी मुहत्ता पैलेस में, जो अब आजकल सरकार को रहती है उसमें. अब आखिरी बात जो फ़ातिमा जिन्ना की है कि एक दिन खबर आ गई कि फ़ातिमा जिन्ना इंतकाल कर गई. लेकिन इतनी पुरस्कार खबर थी कि लोगों के जहन में शक हुआ कि क्या जो 11 सितंबर को तकरीर करती थी उसको ख़त्म कर दिया गया, क्या उसको मरवा दिया गया. लिखा गया था उनको हार्ट अटैक हुआ, वो मर गई. लेकिन 2 चीज़ें और इशारे में आई थी, और अभी मैं छोटी हूँ तभी देख रही हूँ कि उनके तकिए पे खून का निशान था. उनके मुंह पे तकिया रख के उनकी ज़ुबान को खामोश किया गया था. लेकिन ये कि क्योंकि मार्शल लॉ का ज़माना था, हम कुछ कह नहीं सकते थे, कोई बात नहीं हो सकती थी. उसके बाद हम आते हैं अपने ज़माने में. पहले इंदिरा गांधी का आता है और उसके बाद बेनज़ीर का आता है. इंदिरा गांधी की सियासत पे मैं बात नहीं करूँगी, उसकी इंसानी 2 पहलू मेरे सामने, उन पे बात करूँगी. उससे फरमाइश की थी कि रेशमा को میں ایز اے گیسٹ بلا کے سننا چاہتی ہوں. اندرا گاندھی نے. تو میں اس کے ساتھ گئی تھی, پورا ان کا اس کا پورا وہ لے کے. اندرا گاندھی نے دروازے پہ کھڑے ہو کے استقبال کیا, اور جب وہ گانے کے لیے بیٹھی تو اندرا زمین پہ بیٹھی, فرش پہ. تو وہ کہنے لگی نہیں آپ اوپر بیٹھے. کچھ انہوں نے کہا کہ یہ فنکار کی عزت کرنا جو ہے یہ میں نے اپنے باپ دادا سے سیکھا ہوا ہے, اور میں آپ کو اس لیے سننا چاہتی ہوں کہ میں آپ کی آواز کی عاشق ہوں, اور مجھے نہیں سمجھ میں آتا کہ اتنا عرفانی آواز جو ہے, ملکوتی آواز کہاں سے آئی ہے. خیر اس نے بہت اچھا گایا, بہت انہوں نے کئی فرمائش کر کے چیزیں سنی, اور اس کے بعد بہت سے تحفے اس کو دیے, پیسے دیے. ایک تو ان کی یہ خوبی ہے. دوسری ان کی خوبی یہ ہے کہ جس وقت پاکستان سے جلا وطن ہو کے فہمیدہ ریاض انڈیا گئی تو خود اندرا گاندھی نے ان کو جامعہ ملیہ میں پوسٹ آفر کی, اور وہ وہاں پہ کام کرتی رہیں. جب ان کا اندرا گاندھی بھی ختم ہو گئی اور ان کی وہ پوسٹ بھی ختم ہو گئی تو کافی برے دن بھی دیکھنے پڑے فہمیدہ کو, لیکن فہمیدہ نے بہت اچھے دن جو تھے وہ اندرا گاندھی کے زمانے میں گزارے. جیسے برے دن ہماری بے نظیر نے بہت دیکھے, سکٹ جیل سے لے کر اور اس دن تک جب تک کہ اس کے باپ کو نہیں مارا گیا, اور وہ پھر باپ مارا گیا, اور وہ اور ماں, اس کی ماں دونوں کی دونوں. بیگم بھٹو سے بھی مجھے بہت محبت تھی. بے نظیر نے یہ سب چیزیں دیکھیں, اور اس کے بعد جب یہ اس نے جب کارڈ بنا اس کی شادی کا, اور شادی کرنے کے اس نے یہ واقعہ اس نے لکھا ہے کہ تم نے شادی کیوں کی بے نظیر, تم نے شادی کیوں کی. تو اس کا فقرہ ہے جو اس نے لکھا ہے کہ اٹ واز اے میٹر آف کنوینئنس. یہ اس نے کہا تھا بہت دفعہ, ایک دفعہ نہیں کہا, کئی دفعہ اس نے کہا ہے. پھر اس کے بعد جب وہ آتی ہے, شروع سے اس نے کیا تھا ٹیلی ویژن پہ آ کے کرنٹ افیئرس پروگرام. پھر وہ شملہ گئی باپ کے ساتھ, اس نے وہاں کچھ سیکھا, بہت کچھ سہا اس نے. لیکن اس نے جب شادی کا دعوت نامہ فہمیدہ کو دلی میں بھیجا ہماری ایمبیسی کے ذریعے, تو وہی ایمبیسی جس نے ان کے پاسپورٹ لے کے پھاڑ دیے تھے, اسی ایمبیسی نے اس کے خاندان کے پاسپورٹ ایک دن میں بنا کے دیے, اور اسے آنے کے لیے, پاکستان آنے کے لیے اجازت ملی, اور وہ بے نظیر کی شادی میں شریک ہوئی. بے نظیر نے 2 دفعہ حکومت کی, اور دونوں دفعہ اس میں پوسٹوں پہ, کئی پوسٹوں پہ میں بھی رہی. لیکن بے نظیر کو عورت کے مقاصد سے کوئی محبت نہیں تھی. وہ اس نے صرف ایک کام کیا تھا, اس نے کیا تھا, اس کی ماں نے کیا تھا. بیگم بھٹو نے فرسٹ وومن بینک قائم کیا تھا, اور اس نے نینیز کی تربیت کا پروگرام شروع کیا تھا. میں نے کہا دائیاں ہمارے یہاں تھوڑی ہیں کہ ہمیں نینیز کی تربیت کی ضرورت ہے. لیکن بے نظیر کو سکھاتی تھی بیگم بھٹو, کبھی بی ایم کی گیلری میں لے کے, کبھی علی امام کی گیلری میں لے کے, کبھی کسی کے یہاں, کہتی تھی اسے کلچر آ جائے, پاکستان کے کلچر کی سمجھ میں آ جائے. لیکن ہماری بے نظیر بیچاری نے, جب بیگم کلنٹن آئی ہیں تو دوپہر کا کھانا تھا, اس کے بعد ناہید صدیقہ کا ڈانس رکھا. ناہید صدیقہ نے ابھی ڈانس شروع ہی کیا ہے, تو بے نظیر ادھر ادھر دیکھنے لگی. تو ہم لوگ کھڑے ہوئے, ہم نے کہا ہم نے نہیں آنکھ ملانی. کھڑی ہو گئی, ابھی ناہید نے سلامی بھی نہیں لی تو بے نظیر چل پڑی. اس کے بعد بیگم کلنٹن کھڑی ہو گئی اور کہنے لگی مجھے پتا تھا کہ وہ آرٹسٹ سے ہاتھ ملانا چاہتی ہیں. میں گئی اوپر تو ناہید کے اتنے موٹے موٹے آنسو آپ. میں نے کہا چپ کرو, آنسو صاف کرو, وہ کھڑی ہیں مہمان, وہ تم سے ہاتھ ملانا چاہتی ہیں. اس کو لے کے آئی, یوں ہاتھ ملا لیا. تو اس لیے بے نظیر کو شروع میں اپنے میاں کے پیشے سے نفرت تھی, اس کے بعد وہ اس کے پیشے کی حامی بن گئی تھی. لیکن آخر میں جب وہ آئی ہے, ہم نے اس کو 8-9 مہینے میں سیڑھیاں چڑھ کے لاہور میں, اور اس میں علامہ اقبال پاک میں تقریریں کرتے ہوئے دیکھا. بڑی ہمت کی, لیکن عقل بہت کم استعمال کی. اس کے بعد جب میں آتی ہوں خالدہ ضیاء پہ, خالدہ ضیاء سے پہلے حسینہ واجد پہ. حسینہ واجد پاکستان آئیں اور بہت اچھی طرح ملی سب سے, اور بہت باتیں کی. اور جب میں ڈھاکہ گئی تو حسینہ واجد نے دھان منڈی کا اپنا وہ گھر دکھایا جہاں پہ کہ سیڑھیوں سے اترتے ہوئے ان کے خاندان کو قتل کیا گیا تھا. ان کی ماں بھی تھی اور وہ بھی تھے شیخ مجیب الرحمان, اور سب کو قتل کیا گیا تھا. لیکن حسینہ واجد کا یہ پہلو ابھی ہم پہ آشکار ہوا ہے چند سالوں سے کہ جو شخص پاکستان کا نام لیتا ہے اس کو وہ پھانسی چڑھا دیتی ہے, اور یہ وتیرہ انہوں نے گزشتہ 4-5 سال سے اختیار کیا ہوا ہے. خالدہ ضیاء اقتدار میں اپنے میاں کی وجہ سے آ گئی تھیں, اور 36 سال کی تھی جب وہ اقتدار میں آ گئیں, اور انہوں نے کوئی ایسی خوبی کی بات نہیں کی سوائے اس کے بڑے ہلکے رنگ کی چادریں اور اس کے اوپر ساڑی پہنتی تھیں, اور وہ اس طرح ہوتا تھا. ابھی تک وہ جیل میں ہیں, اور دنیا کی آواز اٹھتی رہے. دنیا کہاں کیئر کرتی ہے, عورتیں اگر جیل میں ہوتی ہیں کبھی بھی نہیں کیئر کرتی, وہ پڑی ہوئی ہیں جیل میں. یہ ساری باتیں ہو گئیں. اب آ جائیں کہ یہ کتاب جو ہے کیوں لکھی گئی. یہ کتاب اس لیے لکھی گئی کہ سری لنکا کی بات جو ہے اس کو میں ضرور اس طرح سے کروں گی کہ سری لنکا میں تامل اور سنہالی زبان کے لوگوں کی آپس کی جو لڑائی تھی, اس میں بندرا نائکے کے شوہر قتل کر دیے گئے. پھر مسز بندرا نائکے پہلی دفعہ سری لنکا کی ہسٹری میں پرائم منسٹر بنی, اس کے بعد ان کی بیٹی بنی. لیکن انہوں نے کام کیا عورتوں کے لیے, اور اس وجہ سے ان کو یاد رکھا گیا. پھر حالات وہاں بھی بدلتے رہے. جو چیز سب سے اچھی اور عمدہ ہے اس انا کی کتاب کی, وہ یہ ہے کہ یہ وہ تہذیب, تاریخ سب کو ٹریس کرتی ہے کہ کیا وجہ تھی, کس طریقے سے عورتیں برسر اقتدار آئیں. کچھ وراثتاً آئیں اور کچھ تاریخ کے حوادث کے باعث آئیں, اور اس اقتدار کو مردوں نے بڑی مشکل سے قبول کیا. ڈاکٹر مبارک علی کی تحریروں کا انہوں نے حوالہ دیا ہے کہ انہوں نے کس طریقے سے ڈاکٹر مبارک علی نے اس موضوعات کے اوپر لکھا. پھر یہ تاریخ میں 17ویں اور 18ویں صدی کی عورتوں کا تذکرہ بھی کرتی ہیں, جب رضیہ سلطانہ ہیں, رانی جھانسی ہے, عزت محل ہیں, مہارانی جند کور ہیں, بیگم سمرو ہیں, ان سب نے کیسے اقتدار میں آئیں اور کس طرح سے بیٹھیں. فوج نے بقول اس کی کتاب کے عورت کی حاکمیت کو کبھی بھی قبول نہیں کیا جس طرح کرنا چاہیے تھا فوج نے. اچھا, اور پھر یہ کہ برِ صغیر میں ترقی پسند تحریک نے جس طرح عورت کو اہمیت دی, اس کے بارے میں بھی انا نے اپنی کتاب میں باقاعدہ اس کے لیے لکھا ہے, اور اس پورے پارٹیشن کی تحریک کے حوالے سے بھی لکھا ہے. پھر انا نے بہت اچھی بات یہ بھی کی ہے کہ جو جب مسز بندرا نائکے کے بارے میں لکھ رہی ہے تو وہ اس کے میاں کہتا ہے کہ اپنی عورت کو سامنے لائیں, تو اس نے کہا تھا عورت کا مقام تو کچن میں ہے, اور جب وہ مارا گیا تو وہی کچن کے مقام والی عورت پرائم منسٹر سری لنکا کی بنی تھی. تو اس لیے اس کتاب میں ہمیں تاریخ بھی ملتی ہے, تہذیب بھی ملتی ہے, اور ان عورتوں کے کارنامے بھی ملتے ہیں جو ان سے پہلے ان لوگوں سے پہلے تھیں, یہ بتانے کے لیے کہ ایک فرد کی ضرورت نہیں ہوتی, ایک سماج کی ضرورت نہیں ہوتی, ایک اعلان کی ضرورت ہوتی ہے, ایک تحریک کی ضرورت ہوتی ہے جس کے ذریعے سے عورت برسر اقتدار کبھی وراثتاً آ جاتی ہے, کبھی تاریخ اس کو اس مقام پہ لا کھڑی کرتی ہے جہاں قوم مجبور ہوتی ہے کہ اس کو ایکسیپٹ کرے. لیکن انہوں نے تذکرہ کیا ہے, مارگریٹ تھیچر کا بھی ذکر کیا ہے, گولڈا میئر کا بھی ذکر کیا ہے, ان کے دور میں کیا کچھ ہوتا رہا وہ بھی بتایا ہے. مجھے یہ کتاب پڑھ کے اپنی زندگی کے سارے ادوار یاد آ گئے, تو میں نے یہ کتاب ایسے پڑھی جیسے میں اپنی زندگی کو دہرا رہی ہوں. بہت شکریہ.
Thank you so much. Now I would request Tahmina Aziz Saiba to give us some remarks on the book.
So I don't know if I can do much justice to it after the in-depth review given by Kishwar Naheed Saiba. And in any case, this book came into my sort of view in about 10 days ago. I was traveling, and when I came back, I was asked to read this book. So I don't know how much justice I can do to it in this 10 days of reading. But in any case, whatever I've been able to glean from the book, it's a very, very interesting and fascinating book. And the very
start of the book, there is a sort of theory or thesis presented called the black swan theory, which is that it's a very rare bird and people didn't even know it existed. And so the phenomena of women leaders is sort of akin to that, the black swan, the arrival of the black swan on the geography or whatever of the world. And I think the book has also its very strong aspect in its historical review, because after all, yes, the main thesis is that women leaders were always a result of dynasties or historical accidents or assassinations, but it was not something modern or this century. 2 centuries ago, as far back as that, there were very many women leaders in many areas of India at that time. In fact, there was a whole 100-year dynasty of the Bhopal family. Women, it was a complete matriarchy, women leaders for 100 years. And similarly, there was very many famous women leaders, which Kishwar also mentioned. But there was one aspect to all these leaders which you don't find in the current situation. These were all leaders who were supposed to excel as militarists on the field of battle. So they all had to be good horse riders. They all had to be able to have the saber and rattle and fight like men and lead the battles at many times. And Razia Sultana is an example. There was not Maharani Jindan Kaur, but Maharaja Ranjit Singh's first mother-in-law, who was the head of her tribe, and she was actually on the battlefield all the time, and then she took Ranjit Singh under her wing to train him so that she would then take a back seat and not have to fight battles. So she married him to the daughter. Anyhow, so what I'm saying is that this was one aspect that the it's a very interesting word she's used, not paternal and maternal. So there's the paternal or male-dominated, systems, and the maternal. Now what happened was that in the freedom movements of this century, women came to the fore as a whole, middle-class women. So there was a little more of consciousness about the role of women, the need for women to go ahead, to have the space in society. So that's how when they say maternal policies, it means welfare-oriented or women-oriented policies that are benevolent to the state and its citizens. But in many cases, most of these leaders who may have begun, of course they came out of accidents of history, as I said, but they may have begun their rule as maternal or benevolent, they could not hold on to that situation for long, because there was always some crisis or the other in each country, and she had to take on a stronger role, become almost, how do I put it, assertive and at times even cruel, to the movements that were happening in their countries. So also as for students of history, young students of history, the second half of the book is very interesting, because the first half, of course, is a complete historical theoretical construct of how this whole maternal and paternal and how it played out later on in various regimes. But for students of history, young students of history, the remaining chapters are very interesting because they're very factual and very narrative, as she says herself. They just give you stories of that period. So a lot of facts that we didn't know about Sri Lankan rule or Bangladesh, for example, and the tussle between the two ladies and why and when, and the elections and the assassinations are all there in details. So it will benefit the students of history to be able to read those. And I think now I'll let Anna say what she has to say. Yeah, I think we've said enough, all of us. How long? Yeah, how long it took? Because, Acha, now one thing I just wanted to say before
to tell the truth, all my books are written, and there are many of them, in 6 months, 7 months period, not more.
7 months.
She has been.
I think over too long for years, and I write very, very well and quickly.
अन्ना ने पहले एक किताब बेनज़ीर पे लिखी हुई थी,
बेनज़ीर की
उसके लिए उसके बाद इन्होंने ये एफर्ट की, इसके लिए पाकिस्तान भी आई, इंडिया भी गई, और फिर ये कि श्रीलंका के बारे में नहीं गई थी कभी, तो फिर उन्होंने वहाँ उनके एम्बेसी के ज़रिए से रब्ता किया, और फिर उन्होंने उनकी बेटी से मदरानाए की बेटी से उन्होंने बाकायदा गुफ्तगू की और सारे हालात का पता किया, और वो सियासत को सारे को लिखा जो वहाँ पे टाइगर और सिन्हाली ज़बान के अदीबों के दरमियान चल रही थी। सियासत बहुत कितने साल तक चली है और बड़ी मुश्किल से जाके अब वो ख़त्म हुई है। अन्ना ने जब कभी भी कोई किताब लिखने की कोशिश की है तो अन्ना ने उसके ऊपर बाकायदा मुल्कों में जाके रिसर्च की है, जाके बैठी हैं, बातें की हैं, किताबें पढ़ी हैं दुनिया भर की, और लाइब्रेरियों से भी मदद ली है। उसको पढ़ने वाले वो लोग हैं जो संजीदगी से पाकिस्तान की सकाफ़त को और पाकिस्तान की तहज़ीब को समझते हैं। इसने उर्दू बोलनी सीखी, इस हवाले से उर्दू भी बोलेगी और बहुत कुछ सीखा, और पिछले 2 साल हुए ये आई थी बेनज़ीर पे जो किताब लिखी थी उसकी लॉन्च पे, और अब आई हैं इन सारी वाइव्स एंड विडोज़ के ऊपर बात करने के लिए।
मैं एक सवाल पूछ सकती हूँ आपसे? एक्चुअली जो आपका चैप्टर है इंडिया के ऊपर, जिसमें इंदिरा गांधी के बारे में आपने लिखा है, वो सारी उनकी हिस्ट्री, तो उसमें समहाउ आई थिंक ब्लैक स्वान की जो थियोरी है वो सोनिया गांधी पे बहुत ज़्यादा जाके फिट करती है, लेकिन आपने उनको बिल्कुल इग्नोर कर दिया जबकि वो ऑलमोस्ट प्राइम मिनिस्टर बनने वाली थी आफ्टर हर हस्बैंड्स डेथ, इलेक्शंस के बाद फिर उन्होंने मनमोहन सिंह साहब को बनवा लिया। तो व्हाई डिड यू वांट टू not talk about her at all in the book?
Well, there is the question, because this book got about 12 reviews in 4 countries. Of course, mainly in Pakistan, but also in India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. So the main objection of Indians was, Indian reviewers, was why did I include Mother Milad, Fatima Jinnah, because Fatima was never was prime minister.
Yes.
And it's just the opposite of what you are asking. Why I didn't include Sonia?
But my next question would have been, why did you include Fatima Jinnah?
Why I didn't include Sonia? Though Sonia really won the elections, and she, theoretically, she could have been prime minister, and she just had to refuse because of being Italian, and without, she didn't want all this turmoil of her nationality and so on. And then Indian press called her that it is a Vedantic act, and that she is Sonia the saint, and like Mahatma and so on, blah blah blah, and other stupid things. But just to finish with that, why I included Fatima Jinnah? Because I am the author and I am not objective. I have my own loves and my own hates. I love Qaid Azam. He is my best beloved man. Not because I'm in Pakistan now. When I'm in India, I don't say the same about Jawaharlal Nehru, never. And I really love Qaid Azam, and my next book will be the biography of Rati Jinnah, and I also loved his sister, and I consider that really she was much more underestimated. And much more should be have written about her. That's why I decided that I will include her, because she was very near to become prime minister. If she won the presidential elections against Ayub Khan, why not? And she got a lot of votes in East Pakistan, and we may imagine that she could have become the prime minister of Pakistan that time. So I included her and didn't include Sonia.
Thank you. Now let's go to the audience for some questions. Taira Saiba, why don't you go first? Mic please दे दें उनको. हाँ वहाँ पे करिए. Mic please.
Maybe you better give the word to me. Huh? Yes, I wanted to say a few words.
शुक्रिया मॉडरेटर साहब. प्रोफेसर साहिबा, बहुत अदब और बहुत एहतराम के साथ आप मुझे बताइए, मैं आपसे सवाल उर्दू में करूं या अंग्रेज़ी में या इंग्लिश में, दोनों में?
Urdu or English?
Yes. Well,
anything.
If Urdu, if I don't understand you,
You will,
Kishwar
okay,
will
English.
translate.
Then I do Kishwar Naheed's translations of poems, so that's all right. Without getting into the history of it, we have a historian as a moderator. I'd like to go straight away to page number 274, safa number 274. And you ended the book by saying that these women leaders will come down in history and narratives as charismatic heroines who established the contemporary Asian matriarchy. इस हॉल में, इस शामियाने में मैं समझती हूँ कि बहुत सारे लोग मौजूद हैं. There must be a lot of people present at this book launching event today who may not agree with the fact that there exists a matriarchy in either Pakistan or India or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or anywhere in the world, including Canada and Norway and Sweden and Finland and the Netherlands. Thank you, Professor Saiba.
But as you know, these words were taken in inverted commas because it is a metaphoric, absolutely metaphoric saying. Of course, there is no matriarchy in the world anywhere, but the phenomenon of this rule of these women in the second part of the 20th and the beginning of 21st century may be called the contemporary matriarchy, but called as a metaphoric. And why this book? This book, of course, was written about the women who ruled in South Asia in different period of time, not only in the 20th century, but as was told by another panelist, in Middle Ages and pre-modern period and so on. But the book was written because I wanted to answer the question for myself. Why should the countries so long associated with patriarchy and the subordination of women be the focus for so many absolutely outstanding female political leaders? Not only these six women I'm writing about who were prime ministers of 4 countries, but I also mentioned a lot of other women like your Rana Liaquat Ali Khan, like so many other women in Pakistan, so many women in India, almost all chief ministers of Indian states now are women.
And all that.
Yes, So that's why it was the question. So why? And the part of this question was, and why also dominated male majority if this majority is so misogynic and women haters? Why did they vote for these women? And they voted for these women. Without their votes, they couldn't be the prime ministers. So it was the main question, and I may say that there is a very famous Latin saying that the books have the destinies of their own. Haben sua fata libelli, it is in Latin. And I may say that the books also, they have the hidden histories of their own, how and why they were written. And sometimes these histories are more interesting than the books themselves. And I just wanted to tell you a few things from this hidden history. This book arose from my previous book on Benazir Bhutto. Working on the book on Benazir, I was absolutely struck by similarities between the lives of women who became head of states in Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. It was my first experience of serendipity, because I mean serendipity in the field of work, because I didn't look for that. It was capacity to make discovery by accident through chance observation. It was not simply a method of a similar origin, that all these women were either daughters or widows of founding fathers, some national heroes, and some male leaders, charismatic leaders who were slain. It is not, of course, it is very important, but it is not the point. The point was how surprising were the unpredictable circumstances and situations surrounding their rise to power. And this is really where the theory of Black Swan is dominating, because all these women came to power in the times of a very dramatic crisis. Benazir, after plane crash of Ziaulha, Serimawa after assassination of her husband, Indira Gandhi after absolutely unexpected death of Prime Minister Shastri. Then Khaleda Zia after the arrest of the dictator Ershad. So it happened like that, that by in the moment of crisis, there were no male successors around. All of them, you understand that everybody except only Indira Gandhi was the only child. She didn't have sisters and brothers. Others had a lot of sisters and brothers. Benazir had 2 brothers, Sheikh Hasina had a lot of brothers, and so on and so forth. But it happened that suddenly all these brothers and all these male relatives either died or left the country or were killed like the sons of Mujibur Rahman, and all as if all these men went off stage and to clear the way for these women. So this is about the hidden, hidden history of the book. And another thing is that which maybe whatever Kishwar Sahib told, the hidden part of this the book to be written was that I knew almost all the heroines personally, of course, with the exception of Fatima Jinnah. I visited, maybe the most funny thing is my acquaintances with Sirimava Bandaranaike. I was a school girl, and she visited Moscow in the beginning of 60s after she became the first prime minister woman in the world. So she was very much leftist, as you know, very pro-communist. So she came with state visit to the Soviet Union. And during her visit, she was supposed to visit some privileged school and to see school children. So she came to my school, and I was selected to give her a bunch of flowers and to say something hello, and that's all. But I was brought up in the way at home that I drop a curtsy before her, and it was so old-fashioned and so not Soviet that I got a lot of reprimands what I'm doing. And even somebody said, "What are you doing? She's not English queen. She's the prime minister of democratic Sri Lanka," and so on. But she was moved, and she put her hand on my head and said something in Sinhala. And then somebody translated to me, they said, "What a good girl, what a right girl." So it was about Sirimava. Then I visited Indira Gandhi in the year of her death. I was interviewing her in her house in October, just before Peter Ustinov came, 2 weeks before Peter Ustinov, her last interviewer, came. Then I met Sheikh Hasina in Moscow, because she came a few years ago with state visit to Moscow. With Benazir I met both in Pakistan when she was prime minister and in London when she was in exile. So, and it gives me some additional drive when you write about people whom you met, whom you talked to, and whom you not imagine as heroines, but whom you touched. You do remember, I do remember Indira's hands. I well remember Benazir's skin and Benazir's voice, and it gives you much more privilege to write the book like that. Thank you very much, and my very last words are off top, if you understand the jargon of computer. I wanted to finish with 2 words of big gratitude towards Oxford University Press, Pakistan. For last 19 years, I have been their author. And out of 6 books, my 6 books published only in Pakistan, 4 were published by OUP.
Wow.
And my my work and my my contacts with managers, with copy editors, with designers of OUP, always were successful and very, very pleasant. Thank you very much.
We have time for maybe one question. Madam, please, if you could, over there.
Hello, my name is Mona Raza. I'm here with my book club, and I wanted to ask you, how did you do your research on Fatma Jinnah? Because we have very little documented history on her. So I would like to know more about your research on her.
No, but I am pretty sure that you must have seen and read perhaps the absolutely recent book by Indian journalist Sheila Reddy, Mr. and Mrs. Jinnah, which was republished here by OUP, and she found a lot of new documents, a lot of letters which Rati wrote to the daughters of Sarojini Naidu and the letters which they wrote to her. So it means that the documents are there. We must only know where to look for them. I am sure that Parsi community in Bombay has a lot of documents which they don't want to show.
Yes.
And I am absolutely sure, because you know that she was dismissed from the community, and community was very cruel towards her. But if you look for the document in the right manner, if you come to people while asking them properly, they will share it.
Right. Sir, you had a question?
तो बात ये है कि
Yes, please.
पाकिस्तान
Sir,
में हाँ
if you
बताएं.
could. Excuse me, madam, can we just take another question?
बताएं.
Can we get the mic, please?
Thank you very much, Anna. Seems to be, my name is Naeem.
I don't hear.
Hello. Ji. Unfortunately, I haven't gone through the book, but thank you, to Kishwar Appa, that he almost read, told the stories, what the main contents of the book, which are known to us, most of us, because these are very, very well-known women you have talked about. Huh? So my question is that, basically you are viewing these women and describing these women from a historical perspective, from a historic point of view, not from a feminist perspective. This is what I felt. Quickly I read the Factor of Feminism, 3-4 pages, and where you described that the factor of feminism, post-colonial feminism, existed, and within the background of this post-colonial feminism, these women arose. I disagree with that. Post-colonial feminism is not a geographical phenomenon. This is an ideological premise. it basically came as a response, the women. And so my question is that, you have already described that all these women have themselves says, most of the women have themselves described that they're not feminist, So when they themselves have described them as not feminist, irrespective of the fact that they yielded and created an immense influence on changing the lives of women in this area, but they remain anti-feminist, perhaps, so that we need to ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਪੂਰੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਸੁਣਾਈ ਨਾ ਤਾਂ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਚੈੱਕ ਯਾ
No, I can't very much understand the question, because the question is, of course, it is an anthropological study. It's not the study of feminist, even historian and so on. It's purely anthropological book. And as far as feminism concerned, there is a chapter on feminism, impact on the situation of women in the South Asian. But as far as these 6 women leaders are concerned, all of them absolutely 100% denied any connection of them with feminism in a very rude manner sometimes. And Sirimao Bandaranaike, for example, though she was very much pro-communist and leftist, used to say that she was absolutely sure that the place of a real woman only in the kitchen. Others say that she is in the kitchen, but her place with her husband and children, raising the children and caring the husband.
Okay,
So,
Dr. Anna, I am afraid we have to stop.
Yes.
Our time is up.
Yes,
thank
yes.
you all for coming, and very big thank you to all of the panelists, especially the author.
Thank
If you have
you.
any further questions, please free to approach the author for any follow-ups. And again, thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please let her